Hello and welcome to another step-by-step how to tie tutorial video. This is what I'm calling the Kinky Pinky. This is tied on a Kinkhammer hook. This is the Moonlit ML059 size 12. For a thread, we are using a UNI-Thread black A-dot. The body are two moose hairs. One light, one dark, moose mane. For my thorax, I'm using Peacock Herl, but I am actually trimming this from nearby the eye of the feather. I want it to be relatively small. My parachute post is hot pink parachute indicator post, aka the P.I.P from Fly Tires Dungeon. And my parachute itself is just a standard sized Grizzly Hackle. So let's go ahead and remove our sample, and we can secure our blank hook in the vise. Make sure that's set up. And we can start this like all flies with a single wrap of thread and continue rearward, securing that down. And trim off our excess. Let's go ahead and grab our moose mane. We'll tie that in by the tips and continue our wraps towards the rear. All the way down that kink, and I'm going to stop right about there, so when my thread goes perpendicular off that hook, or off that bend, it hits the tip of the hook. But you don't want it to actually hit. Alright, we'll trim off the final bit of the tips of that moose mane up front, and continue our thread wraps forward to just behind the eye. Alright, now the tricky part, we'll take our two moose mane and we'll palmer these forward. The first wrap will determine on who's going to take the lead in this dance. And in this case it appears to be the lighter color of the two. So as we bring this forward, we'll just make sure that the light stays ahead of the dark. I prefer not to use hackle pliers for this process because I really like to allow the hair to slide in between my fingertips as I wrap this forward. And this gives me the ability to maintain a proper amount, an even amount of tension. I always keep my left hand in contact with my vise throughout this process, and that gives me a known point for my hands and my eyes to all coordinate through. You'd really be surprised how much more coordination you really get by that third point of contact, so to speak. We'll go ahead and secure our moose mane off, a couple locking wraps. Make sure those are nice and secured. We'll trim off our excess, and we'll just wrap those little tips forward and get our thread out of the way, because we're going to come in with a little bit of solar res. This is the bone dry, and we'll just do a light coat over top of everything, and this will seal all that in. Come in with my bodkin before I give it a zap. And this will just make sure everything's nice and even. No pools or puddles. Get it done pretty quick. We'll zap it with our UV light. When you're using a UV light, make sure you give it enough time. I know it cures quick, but the extra 2 seconds just might make the difference. So don't go too fast with it. Give it an opportunity to do its thing. I mean, you have to let it... Oh, that's beautiful. Nice and smooth. I like it. Nice and dry. Alright, let's go ahead and prepare to build our parachute post. A lot of new tires can be intimidated by this process, but it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. It is methodical, and yeah, so let's go ahead and give that a try. Alright, so I'm going to come underneath. I'm going to give it the lift and lower. Lift up and lower it on the top shank of the hook. And come 1, 2, 3 wraps. That's all I really need. I'll take a couple wraps in front and a couple wraps behind. Trim this down to what I call a working length. Everything's nice and even now. So now I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to go behind the post. Now I'm going to come up and over, just laying it down on my side of the hook in front. What I'm doing is I'm just letting that bobbin just kind of do its thing. Once you get a few wraps just around, then you can add a little bit of tension. And once you have that first little bit locked in, have to just take our time wrapping up the post. And what's nice about this material, and we'll wrap our way back down. If we ever need to just take a break, just wrap it back down. We'll come back up. There we go. A couple more wraps higher. I think that's it for us. What's nice about this P.I.P material is when you start to compress it, it really becomes solid. And I think that's what makes it such a great parachute post. Alright, next we'll come in with our Peacock Herl. We're going to tie that in. Actually, no. We don't want to tie in our Peacock Herl yet. We want to tie in our Hackle, because it's Hackle time. So let's go ahead and just splay these fibers out just a little bit. Don't need too much out. And we'll come in and rest your scissors on your fingertip. This will give you a lot more control. Here we go. Little notch, boom, and boom. That's what I call the high and tight. Alright, so I want to tie this with the top side of the feather out, because the way I do this, that's how I get it to turn and work itself in the proper direction. So I need to tie this in opposite. So actually on this one, sometimes it wants to twist a little as you bring it up the post, as it turns that corner. I just can't get it right now. Here's one for the blooper reel. There we go. Alright, bring my thread behind the post, and now I can continue my thread wraps up the post, locking in my hackle feather. And now I'm going to wrap down. So everything's tied in our post. Now we can come in with our Peacock Herl. I'm going to tie this in by the tip. Up front. I'll take a couple of turns of thread behind the parachute post. And I'm going to park my thread just in front of that parachute post. Trim off my excess. Alright, here we go. Couple wraps behind with the Peacock Herl, working our... That's the problem with tying it in by the tips, it's quite fragile. And here we go. All right, a few wraps on the rear side. Do one more. Okay, come underneath. Get myself in front of the thread, work my way up to the eye of the hook, and then I can just wrap over all that again towards the rear, back towards our thread, where I can secure this off behind that parachute post. Alright, thread's on the far side of the hook, on the opposite side of myself, leaving everything nice and clear for me to trim. I can trim off my excess Peacock Herl. Now I just want to bump my thread from the back left kind of to the front right. So now I've got the thread on my side of the hook. And we're going to hammer on our parachute post. Top side up. We're going to take touching wraps, working our way down towards the shank of the hook. Once we're satisfied with our size, we'll go ahead and pull down on the feather and carefully wrap underneath the hackle. You want to stay on the top side of that hook. Alright, so that's secured now. I'm going to leave my bobbin on the far side of the hook. Now I can come underneath and carefully trim off my excess. Save the rest of that feather for a few more flies. Alright, before I come in with my whip finish, I want to trim my post down just a little bit, make it nice and even. About there. Alright, bump my thread around that post. Now I'm on the near side of the hook. Takes a little practice, but 1, 2, 3 turns on the whip finish. There we have it. Go ahead and trim off our tie and thread. And we'll clean up our stragglers underneath, which are inevitable in my little process here. That's okay. We can trim a couple of those off. And looks like we have a few down here too. Here we go. All our friends are on the top. Beautiful. All right, there you have it, folks. That is what I'm calling the Kinky Pinky. Pretty standard Kinkhammer pattern, so happy tying, everybody. And with this one, tight lines. Peace.